Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline magazine. Welcome to Punchline Talks, the big interview. Today I'm joined by Angharad, the CEO of Managing Director of CGT Lettings, based here in Gloucester. Welcome, Angharad. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's quite funny because I've known about you for quite some time. I watched you do a speech a couple of years ago. If you don't mind me saying, you were heavily pregnant at the time, and I was blown away by your enthusiasm for the company. Not just the way that you spoke, to be honest with you. It was inspirational, and that's why I wanted to catch up with you. And that's why I wanted to talk to you as well.
Thank you.
Could you tell me, first of all, please, a little bit about CGT Lettings and how long you've worked there and how many people it's employed, the turnover?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so CGT Lettings, we are a 5-branch lettings and estate agency business based in Gloucestershire. So we have our flagship branch in Cheltenham, we have a branch in Gloucester, Quedgeley, Stroud and Tewkesbury. We've got about 45 staff working for us, spread out across those 5 branches on our head office in Cheltenham. And we have a turnover, including our sales division, of about £2 million a year. And that's grown over the last few years, which is good.
So it must have been, I mean, you guys, obviously everyone knows the housing market is heating up. Have you had a good year? Are you allowed to say that? What's the problem, isn't it? Are we allowed to say you've had a good COVID?
I mean, we've had good things and bad things. We obviously, I mean, as all businesses have experienced, we've had to do lots of kind of changes between home working and office working. We've had the demand for rental stock is just absolutely unprecedented at the moment, and we are experiencing the numbers of applicants that we've never had before in our 34-year history. So it's good. I mean, it's good that we've got people looking for property. The downside is that what all estate agents and letting agents across the country are struggling with at the moment is a lack of stock. So we found some landlords are selling up because of increased legislation pressure on them, changes to tax. They've been selling up, which is kind of constricting the rental supply really for tenants. So, you know, good things, and also always looking for that stock as well.
There's lots of you in the market. Let's be honest about it. There are so many different estate agents and letting agents. You know, I hear various different stories. It's a little bit of not a bloodbath, that's not the right word to say, but it's a bit of a battle, isn't it? It's a tussle. You know, sometimes I hear of people cutting down over people's signs and things and removing things. Are they still going on? And, you know, again, I hear people blaming solicitors for the slow moving of houses, and then you know, what's it really like at the moment?
I mean, it is tough, especially on our sales side. You know, you mentioned solicitors, conveyancing before. We might tell somebody once they put an offer in on a property that they would hope to complete in kind of 2 to 3 months. It's much longer now. 4 or 5 months you would expect to complete. There are delays from all sides. I think if you've got a good estate agent who's really chasing that solicitor hard to make sure things are done, then things will get done quicker. But if you're not putting pressure on the conveyancers, then often things don't get done as quickly as they should. But I mean, yeah, lettings and estate agency, it is an interesting market to be in. We do have a lot of competitors, but that's what makes it fun. We all play the game. Everyone plays the game of where to find the properties and how to find the landlords. And some of us are just good at different bits than others are, I guess.
So how do you go about finding the properties? How do you go about finding the people?
We have a mixture of marketing strategies that we use. I mean, our strongest aspect is that we've been around for 34 years. We've got a really good reputation in the local market. So we get a lot of recommendations, lots of referrals. But something that I've brought in since I've been MD is a much more proactive approach to business generation. So we use new techniques using social media targeting, using instant valuations online, just even things like cold calling, things like that. We use a lot of more proactive techniques as well now to balance it with our standard kind of recommendations that we already get. So yeah, I mean, there's no kind of list out there. There's no database that says landlord. So it's always fun to try and hunt them down. You can't kind of search on LinkedIn for the job title landlord. That doesn't exist. So we have to find new ways to find them and reach them and talk to them and get them to buy into what we are.
And technology is changing all the time. I've noticed a lot more estate agents. I think you guys do as well, is that you do little videos around people's houses. But how's that panning out?
Yeah, we started doing virtual tours when the lockdown happened because we had had to. And we started off just doing them on our phones, but actually we invested in some really good technology that we now can, basically you can go in and show yourself around a property, but virtually, so you can move into different rooms and that sort of thing. And that's been fantastic. And it's, it's quite costly. This has been an investment, but actually it's really shown our landlords and our vendors' properties in a really good light. So yeah, that's been fantastic. We also do a lot of video in terms of kind of staff videos, market updates, legislation updates. We have a really kind of thorough YouTube library now of our staff and what they're up to. So definitely video has been fantastic for our business.
I mean, obviously we've all learned how to Zoom. What's the biggest thing that you've learned as a manager, as an MD during this lockdown?
Obviously Zoom, although I did use Zoom before, weirdly. I think all managers have changed their approach to this. I think all managers have learned a bit more empathy for their different staffing situations and their personal situations at home. We've had to become a lot more understanding about parents trying to juggle work and homeschooling. And I definitely feel, not that I don't feel an empathetic leader before, but I've definitely stepped that up even more of a notch due to the pandemic, and really started to really kind of understand where my team were coming from in different respects. We were all home working, and I remember having a conversation with one of my managers who had 2 young small children at home, who was really upset because she just couldn't feel like she could be at her desk from 9 to 5:30. And I said, I'm really not interested in you being at your desk for 9 to 5:30. I trust you to get the job done. You know what needs to be done. You can do that. If you can do that in shorter hours and get it done and then go and be with your family, then that's fine by me. You don't need to stretch the time out, kind of thing. And I think that's definitely a change, I think, for all managers and leaders over the last year or so.
Now, one of the big things I hear with every single business sector I talk is that it's a lack of staff and a lack of good staff.
Yeah.
You guys find that as well, trying to find the right people, trying to employ the right people?
I mean, we tend to have quite a low rate of trying to find staff, to be honest. We have quite a good staff retention. We've got some staff that have been with us nearly 20 years. So I think we have had to hire a few different positions over the last year, just a couple, and we've actually had a really good uptake on the amount of applications that we've had for it. So I mean, I have heard from, I'm in contact with a few recruitment agents I'm friends with, and they've said that in the last couple of months things have really started hotting up, and there are a lot of that there are more job opportunities opening up. But yeah, we haven't really experienced that ourselves in CGT.
What about the actual housing market itself? Is there a kind of hotspot for Gloucester, hotspot for Cheltenham that seems to be doing far better than other areas?
I think if you're thinking about the county as a whole, it tends to be the places that are a little bit less urban that are getting more interest these days from tenants. Tenants are looking to leave the kind of town centre areas, and they're looking, as we hear with a lot of areas at the moment, that they want houses, they want gardens, they want outside space, they potentially want an extra bedroom to use as a study, as for home working. So we've seen rents going up, especially in areas like Tewkesbury, which is a little bit more rural, and on our Stroud branch, we've been seeing some rents going up there for houses. So I would say, yeah, the kind of city centre flats in Gloucester and the town centre flats in Cheltenham are proving a bit harder to let these days than they used to.
Do you think house builders will change the way that they build houses as well, to incorporate, maybe instead of take out a bedroom and include an extra office?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've already kind of sat in meetings with house builders and on panels with house builders that have said this is definitely something that they're having to do now. They're having to change what they provide because of what people want has changed. So yeah, I think we should expect to see a lot more studies being built into new builds and bigger garden spaces. And also, even if the gardens are smaller, more recreation space out nearby that families can use if they can't potentially use their garden as much. So yeah, I think definitely a change there.
And also an outside bar. I've noticed a lot of people
Yeah.
outside bars. There's at least 3 of them around me. I haven't been invited to any of them yet, but I hope.
Outside bars and hot tubs, isn't it? That's all the rage at the moment.
My next door neighbour's just built himself a little swimming pool. It's massive. When he said little swimming pool, it's absolutely massive. I think it's like 30,000 litres of water he's pumped into it. But there you go. He's not taking his kids away from holiday this year. You also wear a different hat, don't you? Can you explain me what that is?
Yeah.
Chairman of a different something.
Yes, so I sit on the board of an organisation called ARLA Property Mark. So ARLA stands for the Association of Residential Letting Agents. We are the biggest professional body for letting agents in the country. We have about 10,000 members. So I'm a representative from my region. So I represent all members in the Gloucestershire, Bristol, Bath and North East Somerset region. And then I also sit on the ARLA Advisory Board as well, which kind of advises on changing policy and the industry and liaising with government and things like that with regards to lettings. So that's my other kind of hat I wear as well as MD, I suppose.
Now, isn't the rules changing on lettings very shortly? Because the fact of the matter is that landlords can't forcibly remove people from, they can't force them to pay their rent if they fall behind. Is that right?
There's been some rules that have come in with regards to breathing space. It means that if you apply for breathing space, then yes, you can't be chased for the rent that you already owe at the time that you have applied for it. There's always changes that are coming in for landlords and for lettings. We've recently had an eviction ban. We previously our notice periods on Section 21s were 2 months. They were extended to 6 months. They've been reduced back down to 4 months now. So yeah, but you can still chase tenants for their rent arrears, but only if they haven't already applied for kind of breathing space, which they would do through a counsellor and that sort of thing. So,
and are there lots of people with large rent arrears, or is it not too bad?
It's not too bad. We initially saw rent arrears go up slightly. They have been coming steadily down. We worked really closely with our tenants and landlords, especially when the first lockdown happened. We reached out to every single tenant, every single landlord to work out what their situation was and how things were going to go. And we've been able to put in place payment plans and things like that. So we were worried. We did think that there would be a big spike, but I think due to things like furlough and things like that, it's actually kept it at bay, and the rent has continued to be paid. Whether that will change when furlough ends is another matter.
Well, no, I mean, the government has done a fantastic job with that. Let's be honest about it, because they've kept all the money going in, which goes paying for the mortgages, paying for the lettings. Otherwise, there'd be maybe people on the streets. Just don't know, do you?
Yeah, definitely.
Let's just talk about yourself, if that's okay. How did you get into the industry? Have you always, most people don't sort of wake up and go, I want to be a letting agent, so I want to be a recruitment agency. How did you come about into the industry?
Well, yeah, I mean, just like I think everyone in the lettings and estate agency, I just fell into it. I went traveling when I was 21 and came back and really needed a job and didn't want a waitress and was trying to get an office job. And my friend got me a job in a letting agency in a small service apartment company in Cardiff Bay, because I'm originally from Cardiff. And from there, I've been able to make it a really good career. And it's actually a little bit of a pipe dream of mine that one day children will go home from school and they will say, I want to be a letting agent when I grow up. But we need to do some changes first in order to make that happen. There's mandatory qualification coming in soon for letting agents and estate agents. There's also kind of the image of an estate agent and a letting agent we need to work on to change, because there's a survey done and estate agents and letting agents were ranked in terms of trustworthiness between journalists and politicians. So we clearly have a bit of work to do in terms of our trust factor with the public. So yes, I fell into it, and I started in Cardiff and worked my way up, went to work for a corporate, and then relocated to Cheltenham in 2016 and became operations manager for CGT.
Okay, and how did you become the manager of it? Who owns CGT, by the way?
So CGT is owned by a couple called Paula and David Baldwin. They're now pretty much retired from active service. They only really are involved in kind of directors meetings, and they've owned it since it started in 1987. David kind of started it just from Cheltenham then and grew it to the 5 branches. And yeah, I was operations manager for a year and was involved in some huge big changes for the business. As I mentioned before, we used to kind of rely solely on recommendation as our source of business. And when I came in, it was part of my role to change it basically into a more forward-thinking company, going out there and finding new business. I changed all the different processes, systems. And I left then in 2017 and I went into the social housing sector, we now call it my sabbatical. And in early 2018, I was brought back then as managing director. And
did that gap really help you to learn more in depth about the different aspects of the business?
The gap out?
Yes, as in looking into social housing and things like this, working there.
Yeah, it was actually really interesting. I've never worked in social housing before, and it was social housing, but still working with private landlords. And I was working on a criminal justice contract. So we were housing offenders when they came out of prison on bail. So they were kind of temporary housing, and it was really interesting. It was a completely different kind of side of the industry that I'd never seen before. And I was traveling all around the country because we had properties all around, looking at the properties, and also then working with local councils and local police forces in order to open new houses to put people in. So yeah, I think it definitely gave me a different perspective that I brought a little bit back then with me when I came back to CGT.
What's the biggest thing that you love about your job?
Biggest thing I love about my job, okay. There are many aspects. My friends think I'm a bit sad how much I go on about lettings and how much I go on about my job. My favorite thing is I love developing staff. I love it when I get somebody who just joined the industry and they say, I want to make this my career, I want to progress, I want to be a manager, I want to do my qualifications. And I love being able to take them from entry level up to manager and help them along the way and help them gain their qualifications with Arla. We've got quite a few staff who have moved up through the ranks in the business. My area manager, Nadine, she started as a negotiator when I was first here, when I was operations manager. I put her on a development plan. She went up to senior negotiator, then she went on to another development, she went on to manager, and then she went up to area manager. So she's kind of, followed that route, that career path through the business. And that's my favorite thing is just seeing people achieve their goals.
Well, CGT, do you see yourselves opening any other branches and maybe stretching a little bit further out? So Gloucestershire, were there ever any plans to franchise it like some of the others have done?
I mean, not to franchise it. We were always interested in opening new offices. We grow by kind of standard growth, with our teams, but we also grow by acquisition. And if an acquisition were to come up in a town that we weren't already in, either in Gloucestershire or just on the edges of one of the counties nearby, I'm sure that we would go for that. Because yeah, definitely, I'd like to go further north and I'd like to go further south in the county.
I'd like to go further north and I'd like to go further south.
Yeah, basically, eyeing up kind of Evesham, Pershore way north because we're already at Tewkesbury, and then south kind of Cirencester way, that way. So
the biggest thing I always think about estate agents is just that it's so competitive, a bit like car dealers as well. So well, good luck with that anyway. I hope that works out well for you. What's your favorite book, or what's the book that you're reading at the moment?
Oh, well, I've just finished reading a really interesting book by the secret barrister, which is called Fake Law, and it was going into some kind of myths about law and basically how the media sometimes influences the public perception of different cases and things. So that was really interesting. I just finished that, and that was talking about kind of people's right to apprehend burglars and things like that, and how sometimes those cases are blown up to be incorrect to what they are. So yes, we deal with a lot of legislation in lettings, and then obviously then in my spare time I'm reading books on law, which is probably also a bit sad.
I don't think so. No, I've actually got that by the side of my bed as well. I haven't started it, but I've got lots of books which I don't start. What have you got as download? What's the last album or CD that you bought for yourself?
The last album I downloaded was the new album by London Grammar, and I'm listening to the new album by Wolf Alice. I'm kind of into my alternative music scene, I guess.
It's always interesting to listen to what other people like to listen to. Sometimes I get really sort of surprised as well. You have a perception of people. That's why I always ask that particular question. We're kind of wrapping up really. So what's your top 3 business tips, please?
Okay, so top 3 business tips. So the first one I would say is to know your numbers. So as a business owner, as a manager, you need to understand what your targets need to be in order to achieve a correct income in order to make a profit. So you really need to understand and know your numbers. And I found from speaking to lots of letting agents in particular, who are smaller letting agents, maybe one-man bands or people with 1 or 2 members of staff, they haven't really worked the numbers correctly, and they don't understand the kind of profit line, which means that sometimes people are going out and they're quoting a fee on valuations, we call them, and actually that fee is not enough to make any money off that sort of thing. So number one is really know your numbers. Number two is, as a business owner or a business leader, you need to be looking at the business and not working in the business. So I think sometimes managers, we get really caught up with the day-to-day of dealing as a letting agent or a estate agent. You might deal with kind of complaints, or you might deal with answering the phone and booking and viewing. And actually that's not growing your business. That's not adding to your business. You can pay someone to do that. It's you that has to grow the business. And if you're not doing the tasks you need to do in order to grow, then no one else is going to do those things. So working on the business, not in the business, is number two. And then number three is utilize social media to find new business for yourself, new leads, because gone are the days where salesmen had to jump in a car and drive down up the M5 in order to go to meetings. You can, and in order to find new prospects, you can do this now, all from the comfort of your desk, using social media, using targeting. So really try and work social media. I know some people, it's kind of a big like elephant in the room. They don't really want to tackle it, but actually once you get to grips with it, there's loads of courses out there as well to get you started. It actually can be really a low cost way to find new business for you.
I can agree more with social media as well. It might run Punchline, but it's a real big part of what we do as well.
Yeah.
And Angharad, thanks ever so much for joining Punchline Talks today. Really nice to see you again. And
Great.
good luck.
Thanks
Good luck
for having
expanding north and south.
Thanks very much. Thanks.